my biggest position of need for this team was going to be and continues to be defensive line, and in particular, an edge defender. And, we've heard Sean McDermott after the season talk about, to win a Super Bowl, you need 2 to 3 difference makers on each side of the ball. We've heard Brandon Beane talk about, you know, having game wreckers on defense. And in the past, he's talked about, like getting a player like one of the Bosas and uh, how difficult it can be when you're, not drafting top 10. And that's kind of where I've landed on this conversation is when the Bills are having the level of success that they've been having, it's hard to find those, like blue chip edge rushers in, the late 20s, late first round, early second round type players. And I think there's plenty of positions where we see guys get taken, in later rounds. Like, for example, wide receiver, running back, tight end. Every year there's guys coming out that, slip to the third, fourth, fifth round that go to the right situation, that have the right team around them. And honestly, just kind of like an influx of talent at those positions that you might be able to wait and see on a guy like that. Edge defenders, it's one of those positions where you don't you don't really see very often, a guy taken in the fifth round that everybody slept on that just blows up. It just doesn't happen that frequently. And when you're in that position, you're left pretty thin on options. And, you know, taking the player out of it, being Myles Garrett, it's not my favorite move to send considerable assets to another team and have to figure out a contract for a guy that's going to be something like $30 million for a guy that's going to be hitting his age 30 season. It's not it's not the most ideal, way to acquire that guy. The ideal way is, draft, develop, resign. Like I said, we're going to be drafting at the end of the first round again. And, you know, we found Groot at the end of the first round, and I like the player that Groot is. I like who he's developing into. I think there was also some really weird circumstances around that draft that let him fall that late in the draft. And, being the COVID year and all that weird stuff going on, I think in most normal years, he's not making it to the tail end of the first round. So that kind of leaves you with the options of acquiring a proven commodity, and you have to pay the king's ransom for that. You have to pay the big salary, and it's not ideal. But when I look at what a common theme has been in Bills playoff elimination games is pretty consistently the defensive line and not being able to affect the opposing quarterback enough. And if you're talking about a guy that can do that, Myles Garrett is maybe the best in the league at doing that. So kind of looking at situations, different ideas of what it might take. I've as soon as something like this gets announced, you go to the social medias and you'll see all kinds of wild ideas out there. And I've seen a lot of ideas of including Groot as a player in the trade, including Ed Oliver. I will say that, like, if a trade like this were to happen and that's the contingency to get it done, I think there's certainly an argument for, moving from Groot. Oh, he's coming up on needing a new contract himself. It's going to be, at least mid-20s range probably, and at a certain point, you have limited resources, and how much money do you wanna tie up? I could see that being, a possibility of not being positive you want to pay him and kind of maybe drafting another guy, resetting the clock on that. I don't love those ideas, and I think those ideas typically come up in, like, this manner of, well, we have to conserve our picks, and for me, first of all, I don't think Myles Garrett goes for multiple ones. I think you're talking a first round pick and then, maybe a 3, 4, maybe a 2 to sweeten the pot. I don't think it's going to take multiple ones. Even if it did, I mean, I look at it in the perspective of we're going to be drafting a guy at what, 30? So if that's the pick you give up this year, just pretend you drafted Myles Garrett. And then say you have to give up another one next year. Hopefully, Myles Garrett puts you over the top and you won a Super Bowl. So you're talking pick 32. And if, I could hand you a piece of paper today and make that chalk, make it happen, that it cost you, your draft pick this year and you gave up a pick 32 next year and the Bills won a Super Bowl. I don't know anybody in Bills Mafia that's not signing up for that.